delay, and let me introduce you to our speakers. With us today, we have Scott Barnett, Vice President of the Defense Sector here at Centurylink. We have Karen Davis. Hi, Scott. We have Karen Davis, the most awesome government solutions architect here at Centurylink.
Hi there.
And we have Jason Brumfield, the Director of Sales for the Federal Civilian Sector, and also awesome.
Thank you.
So let's dive in. As rapidly as technologies seem to change before today, the new digital normal has really put an exclamation point on the need to accelerate IT modernization. And really for government, for you, for your agencies, the realities of operating a remote workforce model, delivering more critical services to citizens and to our men and women serving our country. And this all means increasing the adoption of bandwidth-intensive software as a service applications and really kind of rethinking the wide area networking strategies. So a software-defined wide area network can boost the power, efficiency, and scalability of networks and enable access to those SaaS applications, sorry, tongue twister, that support the functions of government at all levels. And today we're going to discuss how Centurylink is helping government agencies on their journey to Sd-Wan, including challenges, how to successfully implement Sd-Wan, top-of-mind strategies, solutions and technologies, requirements, and really everything under the sun that you could want to ask about Sd-Wan. Please ask your questions. And of course, we've created some questions to kick things off, but please, again, submit as we go along. And with that, we're going to dive right in. So first question. What are some of the network modernization challenges that you're seeing that agencies are facing across public sector, especially in the new digital normal of agency operations? Can you touch a little bit on federal, defense, and state and local government challenges? Scott, why don't we go ahead and get started with you?
Yeah, sure, Lesley, thanks. I think I'll key in on a word modernization or modernizing, and I think that means different things for different folks that are out there as network operators or managing their enterprises. And why don't I pick on the Army Corps of Engineers? Our friends over there have engaged in a journey to start replacing their copper plant with fiber. And for them, those are the beginning steps of modernizing the infrastructure that connects all of their dams. For DISA, there's a mass migration underway from TDM to Ethernet at the edge of their network. For them, those are some of the beginning steps of modernizing. So it really all depends on where you are. I can tell you, through the pandemic, as I made my rounds through my customer base, some of the key themes that I heard over and over again, and some of the key words were, we couldn't flex or we couldn't surge our networks up overnight for the work from home traffic that we needed to handle. And so think of these things as building blocks. Think of the access, then think of, am I moving my network from a static environment to a dynamic environment, and then on from there. So all of the building blocks fit together to kind of move you through this modernization model or journey, if you will. Jason or Karen, anything to add?
I love the idea of the building blocks. I think that's been something that we've tried to help with our customers as well. And part of that modernization journey is what are you doing to go from this almost, private network environment, some proprietary things, and how do you start to harness the internet and move to a secure public network environment, which is really what Sd-Wan is kind of driving us towards. So a lot of the challenges we've helped with, and Scott, kind of to your point, is the building blocks. Might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but basic connectivity and having more reliable, more scalable connectivity to the internet. As long as you can get that first foundational element right, you open up all these other possibilities to start to modernize and migrate, to a software-defined WAN. and start to leverage all these other types of applications that kind of help you migrate to a modernized WAN.
Great. Karen?
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges we see across the Beltway with agencies and our customer base is how to get bandwidth out to these remote branches, these field offices, how to solve for the remote worker, and how to do that in a cost-effective way with IT budgets flat or stagnant or declining. And so really what we're talking about is this broadband access play using a combination of broadband techniques to solve that bandwidth need. You know, all these workloads and applications we all consume these days are so bandwidth heavy. They require a tremendous amount of bandwidth. And as Scott said, we have to flex accordingly. And as Jason said, we have to be able to reach these remote sites, often in difficult places. So we use a combination of these access techniques as the key building block of an SD-WAN overlay.
Fantastic. So why are we hearing so much about SD-WAN, and how does it specifically address some of the challenges that you all just talked about? Why don't we start with Karen this time?
So SD-WAN absolutely addresses some of these key challenges that we're all faced with. We're all in the same boat trying to figure out how to solve for this. Certainly using broadband access, whether it's DSL, cable, fiber to the prem, wireless, even satellite and VSAT. All of these technologies support the ability to deliver bandwidth effectively and rapidly to an end user, to a field office, to a hard-to-reach location, and they solve that remote worker challenge. They also do a couple of other things. Broadband supports the benefit and the ability for agencies to leverage internet economics, and that's key from a cost containment strategy and key to your new approach to cost modeling efforts moving forward. The other thing broadband does is it helps us improve reliability and availability at the branch. You can use a combination of different access methods, and you can combine them. You can use them as a primary access method, let's say at a small branch office. You can use them as dual access connections. You can use them as a diversity play to a pure, let's say, Ethernet to MPLS connection. So you can mix and match the different flavors of broadband together, and that increases reliability, scalability, and availability at the branch. So that's the broadband. That's the first step, if you will, broadband into the world of SD-WAN. We then take a look at some of the key inherent benefits that SD-WAN brings. And the most important one is application or policy-based routing. So SD-WAN in and of itself has the ability to identify an application and a workload, and to be able to what we call traffic steer that workload or an application to the appropriate path, the best path that optimizes performance. So it could state that we create these forwarding policies and these templates, and then traffic is steered to the best path available. SD-WAN also does some other great things. It supports zero-touch provisioning, so it allows you to easily deploy SD-WAN out to a branch office. Oftentimes, the router platforms, just with a simple software update and a push, can become these modernized SD-WAN appliances. And SD-WAN also supports virtual network functions. And VNF support really helps from a hardware sprawl standpoint. We take a look at a branch office, and it's heavily centric on hardware, and it's appliance-based, and it's got 3 or 4 different boxes, a WAN optimization device, and switches, and routers, and firewalls. And the beauty of SD-WAN is you can take this service chaining approach. You can pull VNFs into a server or to a universal CPE device, and it's a really nice streamlined approach from an operational standpoint and a functionality standpoint. So really, SD-WAN supports network automation. It makes the network more responsive. It supports network maneuverability, and it really has tremendous amount of flexibility as we look forward to our next generation WAN.
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible, Karen. Jason or Scott, you want to jump in on there?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I would just, add to that again is I think Karen really got to it at the end for me, which is, by harnessing really the power of the internet, and, let's move beyond T1s and TDM speeds, and let's see what we can do with that broadband connectivity to the internet, start to get that further pushed out to the edge of the network. And then you can start to focus more on the applications and what are your users trying to do. And really what enabling and empowering the SD-WAN does is it really starts to make the the network capabilities so much more powerful in that you can really start to set policies and controls to deliver that end user experience, at a very granular, very scalable, very flexible level. But it all starts with, a really powerful network, and how do you push that out as far as possible out to the edge to enable more of your users. Scott.
Yeah, and talk about pushing it out to the edge to enable the end users. Think about the combatant commanders and the war fighters. And for DoD, you can plan for a mission and you can understand the mission environment, but so many times you are in the mission and something changes. And if you can move into this dynamic environment, and while you're in the mission, you can change your policies or change the bandwidth with your orchestration tools and literally pour more bandwidth into the fight or into the battle, is a pretty powerful thing. So on one side of it, we talk about enabling static, maybe end user buildings or at the edges of enterprises. But on the other hand, this also applies in the real-time mission environment. And I think it's really a very powerful tool.
Great, thank you. Next question. What should customers be evaluating or looking at within their own network as they consider introducing Sd-Wan into their environment? So we're gonna go ahead and start with our fabulous SE, Karen, again on this one.
Mm-hmm. So we approach this in a couple different ways. The first thing is for our customers to take a look at their business objectives and see what their mission is, right? Do they want to support cost savings? Do they want to streamline operational support and budgets? Do they want to use existing router inventory or existing SREs? So kind of the first step is looking at the business objectives and make sure that everything from a modernization standpoint aligns with the federal initiation and guidelines and reference architectures for modernization and transformation. Then we take a look and we pivot over to the technical. And we recommend doing kind of an assessment across 3 layers: the access layer, the transport layer, and the application or workload layer, and figuring out and doing really an inventory of how performance is working today and what you want to see in terms of improvements moving forward in this modernized world. And so we take a look at those, and we can help work with you hand in hand in a collaborative fashion to help define that and really suggest where you should be headed. I think the other key thing we look at when we're doing initial designs with Sd-Wan and our federal customers is to start grouping our site types, whether that's done by bandwidth or by criticality in terms of access of those staff members to certain applications. We start guiding their categorization, if you will, so then we can decide which sites would be candidates for broadband, which sites need to stay on MPLS, or a combination of the two. So those are primarily the first steps we take when we look at introducing Sd-Wan into any of our end user environments.
And Karen, you said for federal, could we do that for our state and local customers as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I would suggest the same approach as well.
Awesome. Great. Jason or Scott, do you want to follow on to that?
Yeah, it's the technology, but it's also the people. And you've got to start with the people, all of the stakeholders in your organization, and enroll them in the direction that you want to take. And really be honest with yourself and understand whether or not you have the internal horsepower to undertake the modernization and go forward. And I can tell that this is going to take us into the various deployment models, but I don't want us to forget about the people and making sure that everybody has the right mindset going forward as they begin this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'd say that one of the things we've seen as we've started to walk in this journey here with some of our customers is their ability to manage policies, manage controls. And it's more at the people level, the systems and the technology are going to be able to do the work. We're going to be able to do it technically, but how do we have proper governance? How do we make sure that there's change management and some solid approaches to modernizing the network, and making sure that the vision for an SD-WAN is realized, to all the users of the network.
Great. Okay, so this has a few parts to the question. So what are some of the key things agencies need to think about as they transition to SD-WAN? How should they craft a roadmap for that transition? Are there best practices to consider? And how can Centurylink help?
Yeah,
Jason, why don't you go ahead and start us off on this one?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've been talking about the building blocks quite a bit. So, to me and in our experience, and again, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of our civilian customers who obviously have a very rural and diverse and distributed user base, and they all come with their own unique challenges. Number one is, do they trust that they can get the layer one connectivity, and get the internet out there to their folks so that they can engage in this modernization. So you got to have a really good partner to do that. Again, that's the dirty work, but that sets the stage, for being able to modernize. And then I really do think the second thing is what we just left off with, which is, what applications are you trying to support? How robust, how rich are you trying to make that experience? Because you've been very used to doing it in a legacy format for a long time, and it's worked. But now there's a lot of new technology and a lot of new scale and flexibility and hopefully cost savings that comes along with that modernization. So it's the policy management, the change management. How are you going to actually implement? And who's your partner going to be that's going to help you support it? Because you, as a government agency, are going to be obviously on the front lines to constituents and to those end users, but you need a partner that's got your back, to kind of help that. So what's your strategy there? And then I think the last thing, and it's going to lead into those deployment models we talked about, is, what's your ownership model? And there's so many different ways to go about doing that drive the right value and cost savings for the agency. But those, I think, are really just kind of the three key points to make sure you're asking industry, to help you with when you're getting ready to start that journey.
Scott, do you have anything you want to add there?
No, I would fully agree with all of those points, and I can tell we're headed into the deployment model discussion now. So you want to go ahead and go there?
Yeah, we're going there. Can you please talk about the different types of deployment models that exist when rolling out SD-WAN into a customer network?
Yeah, let me see if I can do this justice and sum it up pretty easy for the audience. So into the scales here, do it yourself, obviously, hybrid, and fully managed. And in a minute ago, I talked about the people, not the technology. So you have to sit down and understand inside of your IT organization or your network planning or architecture and engineering organizations, do you have the internal might and horsepower to move out and do it yourself? And do it yourself means that you're going to take control and own all of the building blocks that we've been talking about. And so we haven't even really touched on things like zero trust and edge computing and on and on. So already the list of things to move out on and do it yourself are pretty big. I would say, though, here's an example, a big customer of mine like DISA likes to do it themselves, and they have the capabilities and the know-how and the right partners around them to go out and do it on their own, do it yourself. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have fully managed. You're going to fully outsource and let somebody else manage this. And in between is hybrid, obviously. There's a mix of both. But let's talk about fully managed, because I think there are some things that you might forget along the way. So if you pick the right provider, when you move into a fully managed SD-WAN deployment, that provider is going to be with you in the journey when you move through and you're actually modernizing your SD-WAN deployment. Here's the other thing they can do for you, and I think you might have heard Andrew Dugan, our CTO, mention this in his conversations is we can manage other services, and meaning we can bundle other services that you might be consuming as an enterprise or an agency. And we're also very well connected to cloud environments, and we're very well connected to exchange points. So think about it. It's what's right for you. Do it yourself, hybrid, or fully managed. You may start in one place and find yourself evolving or operating in another environment. It really just depends on how your organization evolves and where you're headed as a business. Jason or Karen?
Well, yeah, I'll jump in, Scott, and just, maybe a little bit more on the financial side of it. We're starting to see this shift, like you said, calling it a hybrid model, I think is, it's kind of one of the most interesting ones, and it comes back to that governance, right? So it's really, that's more of a maybe government-owned equipment, and then you've got contractor-operated assets, and I think we kind of have to figure that stuff out together, and that's where that governance and policy management and really the people element comes into it. But then I think especially on the civilian side, we are definitely starting to see the need, to move to a fully managed service. And that allows our customers, to really focus on their mission. And so when we talk about contractor-owned and contractor-operated, that is, an in-depth partnership. And it's also got to have some financial payback. And so I think the good thing to realize is when these deployment models are being considered, I think it's just a point of inflection as to, what's the most important thing to you. Do you want to have your hands in the technology and really make all that work? Or are you really ready to partner up with a managed service provider and kind of have them do the dirty work, so to speak, so you can focus on the mission? And I know that's a shift. Any one of those directions you choose, whether it's, do it yourself, government-owned, government-operated, a hybrid model, or contractor-owned, contractor-operated, it really involves a lot of communication and partnership and really setting the guardrails around your particular program as you start to go down, the path of modernization.
Karen, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I would. We've worked with customers who've tried to do it yourself, and what we've found in working with them and as an experienced managed service provider for Sd-Wan since 2016, it's a lot more complex than meets the eye. So you do need experts on the application and workload side. You need routing experts. You need security folks involved. And then this is looking at networking in a different light. It's not just sizing pipes and bandwidth. It's actually getting into and collaborating very closely with our customers to understand how they consume workloads and applications. So it's a little bit of a different nuance than how we normally work with customers, and our customers are normally used to working with contractors like ourselves. So we've seen that a co-managed approach works very nicely. It combines kind of a do-it-yourself mode, gives our customers still the ability to add a lot in terms of the creation of those templates, work with us on setting forwarding profiles and policies, and really kind of closely kind of handhold, if you will, to get this overlay off the ground. And that seems to be the trend that we've been seeing and noticing in the Sd-Wan space.
Fantastic. All right.
Hey, Lesley.
So we're going to dive. Yeah.
I just wanted to come back. I liked what Jason said about focusing on the mission. And if you're doing it yourself, perhaps you're working really hard to be a subject matter expert in managing your IT environment. But for the Department of Defense, and we saw the Army and the Air Force move out on this in enterprise IT as a service, they don't want to be the experts in managing those environments. They want to be the experts in executing their mission sets, whether that's cyber or whether they're out flying airplanes and they're in battle. They don't want to spend all of their time managing the IT environment. And I think that's a really important point and something to consider when you're looking at doing it yourself or moving into a fully managed environment. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was important.
Yeah, that's great. No, thanks, Scott. We're gonna take the plunge now. Traditional security models were designed to support a walled castle approach where all of a company's data, applications, and users operate behind a firewall at a centralized location. What about the Centurylink security posture as the network extends to the edge? Karen, do you want to go ahead and get us started on this one? Everyone loves
that's
security.
A great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question and great topic. And we're following the guidelines from DHS on TIC 3.0 very closely. We're also keeping our finger on the pulse of zero trust networking and zero trust architectures. And I think we all agree as we've got this distributed edge environment, there needs to be a new way to deliver security, right? I think we're all in agreement on that. Moving from something that's static, that's kind of north-south, to something that's lateral in terms of protection, or east-west, something that's more fluid in nature, since everything else is very fluid now in terms of networking. Moving into an environment where we have this new model of authenticating users and devices, even if they're inside the boundary of our organization. So we are working on use case pilots and models. We're refining security controls. We currently have a use case pilot today with a federal agency on TIC 3.0 and the distributed architecture. So we're really excited about where this takes us, and also developing a playbook and a smooth migration path from TIC 2.2 architectures to 3.0. So we're pretty eager to continue to develop and work with our customers and keep our finger on the pulse of all the security stuff and the distributed edge that it's going to deliver.
Great. Jason, do you want to weigh in on security?
Yeah, I was actually, Karen kind of cued my memory on something, so I wanted to bring that up. Yeah, we're in this really interesting inflection point, with EIS in particular, where, we have to be very cognizant of, the existing TIC framework and 2.2 in particular, but everybody's ready to go to 3.0 and the technology's there, and then we have to figure out the smartest way to go and do that. And again, I think it's really important to just remember those building blocks, and enabling a software-defined network and doing that the proper way over an Sd-Wan implementation is really going to set the stage for how you do all of that other great stuff. So I think Karen's mentioned a couple great things. Zero touch provisioning. How does that make it easier to do zero trust networking? And then how do you migrate to cloud security? All of those higher level applications are going to fall into place if we really get the building blocks right. And I think the timing of the Sd-Wan conversation here is great and surely sets the stage for the next one of these, which I think is going to be more security focused.
Scott?
Yeah, you certainly don't want to let the bad guys in, and I'm not the security expert, but here's a little nugget I'll leave you with. Talk about doing it yourself. I saw Palo Alto sent out a press release this week on a containerized firewall application with machine learning embedded in it. And so that may mean that if you're doing this yourself and that Palo Alto device or application out there is learning and building policies on its own, you're not having to look at that all the time. You can be somewhere else inside of the architecture working on whatever that may be. So things are continuing to evolve is my point. And security and zero trust postures are very important pieces of rolling out any Sd-Wan architecture.
And you all touched on TIC 3.0 and a lot of different kind of security and compliance, and for our state and local agencies on the line, how can they look to those federal security guidelines and take advantage of that?
For me, I think the common layer there is it's cloud-based security. It's literally moving from a moat, castle and moat type of a scenario with your traditional firewalls to more of a cloud-based security profile. And so, Scott mentioned Palo Alto. They're a great partner. There are obviously other solutions out there and building blocks to where you can make that move. But, the thing that I think can be leveraged across all, industry or public sector. It's just what building blocks do you have in place to move your security profile to the cloud, and how are you going to manage that transition? Because that's definitely the way things are going.
Great. And Karen, you touched on pilot projects a few minutes ago when we were talking about the last question. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit, on how some of our current customers committed to a pilot? Why did they do that early on? Like, why should customers consider a pilot to get started?
Well, I think it's important if you're talking about hundreds of sites to consider rolling out a pilot, and that's typically what a lot of our customers do. So we start with a handful of sites, we mix in some regional office buildings, 1 or 2 data centers, and a couple of different field offices with different characteristics, and a mix match of broadband. So we combine that together, and we help to evaluate the customer's applications as well as QoS, because QoS becomes an issue when you're talking about broadband. And we help write policies in a collaborative fashion with our customers, and that's really what the purpose of the pilot does. It allows you to stress test things, to push the envelope a bit, and see where your comfort level is, how you can tweak those policies to meet the performance criteria that you're looking for. And a pilot's a great way to do that.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add onto that too, is the people part. We're pretty excited to jump into it with some of our customers. I think we've announced pretty publicly. Department of Interior chose us for DOI, and they're starting that journey as well. And so I think we're most excited about piloting, how it's going to work and really building something together. I think there's so much to be learned, and then the more you take into account, not only the mission but the user experience, and how does that actually play out in a pilot and kind of a protected, environment is critically important to the long-term success of the transition.
Scott, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, and I think you might discover that you could do it yourself. You'd say, hey, we've got this. It's not that hard. Or, wow, I think we're going to need to move more towards this fully managed environment. This is harder than we thought. So it's going to really help you understand your full deployment model and scope a little bit better.
All right, so I have an in the weeds technical question.
Not
Does
me.
Does the CL SD-WAN solution rely on endpoint agents, site and client devices, gateway services that leverage the open internet like Zscaler Palo Alto model, or using the CL backbone as a managed transport, the Microsoft Virtual WAN model? If the solution is using the CL transport, do you use dedicated links to major CSPs or just multiple ingress-egress points near the CSPs? That is definitely a technical in the weeds question.
So SD-WAN helps. Certainly, you can use dedicated connections. We have a product called Cloud Connect, which are dedicated connections into cloud service provider environments. We also can use regular internet connections into cloud vendor environments. We can also interface and use IPsec tunnels or GRE tunnels, and we can build those to interface with CASB solutions, cloud access security brokerage things that Jason mentioned, that are residing in a cloud or a gateway facility. So we can build it a couple of different ways, and we put SD-WAN on top of that and write policies accordingly. So absolutely interfacing to cloud service providers, to SaaS applications, and to CASB solutions is absolutely available with SD-WAN.
Great. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, drop them in we'll ask them no matter how technical they are. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so next question. How can agencies buy SD-WAN technology, and what are some of the procurement options? Jason, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, see, I guess Scott or I could talk to that depending on, the market segment. I mean, obviously, there's still some modification processes going on the EIS contract, again, from a service standpoint. So that comes down to, number one, understanding how we were trying to buy SD-WAN. Are you buying it as a fully managed service? Are you looking for it as a product that, Centurylink sells or your whoever? So that is, underway with the EIS contract right now. But again, we talked about building blocks a lot. All of the elements of an Sd-Wan solution are available, on those contracts. So right now, from a civilian network modernization standpoint, the EIS contract is probably the straightest path to get to the different elements of an Sd-Wan solution, whether it's, buy your own equipment, buy the network, buy the managed service, put it together yourself, or some combination of that, or totally outsource to your EIS contractor. I think that's the best way to go. You could also put those same combination of elements together under Alliant 2. So we've seen Alliant 2 as an IT services contract and a total IT solutions contract. And I think there'd be any number of folks at Centurylink that would love to help agencies, put together those solutions and talk about those two purchasing vehicles in particular, Alliant 2 and EIS.
Yeah, I would certainly echo the best-in-class contract vehicles. EIS certainly is one of the flagship contracts that we have, along with Alliant 2. But I also wanted to mention that the other part of my life is taking very good care of the defense industrial base. And inside of the defense industrial base, they can come and buy from Centurylink on standard paper, just like I would treat or sell to any other enterprise out there. So it's easy to consume the conversation with agency vehicles and talk about agencies, but I also want to make sure the defense industrial base knows that we have the right set of partners similarly, and it might even be easier as you come to us as an enterprise to take care of whatever your needs are.
Karen?
I think Scott and Jason summarized it great.
And then, of course, for our state and local customers, we have the NASPO contract and then the state level contract vehicles as well. Great. Let me just check and make sure we don't have any other questions. All right. So here's one. What are some of the add-on feature sets of SD-WAN?
So some of the SD-WAN providers that we work with, and we work with a breadth of them, so we have several different platforms that we work with, have advanced security features. So you can overlay advanced or enhanced security feature packs on top of SD-WAN to do URL filtering, to do IPS support, malware, et cetera. In addition, this whole concept of virtual network functions and service chaining. So many of our customers start small. They start with kind of a vanilla box, a plain SD-WAN appliance, and then they transform that later on by adding virtual network functions and supporting service chaining. And that's where you get into that reduction of the hardware footprint at a remote office. So some of those types of things are good examples of add-on feature sets to SD-WAN.
Great. Jason or Scott, did you want to add anything there?
No, I think it's a great approach to adding on.
Great.
I think Karen said it perfectly.
All right, so we're coming to our final question. So Scott, we're going to get started with you for our final question. So why should agencies reach out to Centurylink to talk about their SD-WAN needs?
Well, I think we've covered it all, but let me see if I can't put it all back together for you. So I think we have a great understanding of how you get started down this path on the people side, and we can help coach you on that. We have the right technology and capabilities ready to go and the right partners with us to help you. Whether you're going to get started on the do-it-yourself side or the hybrid side or the fully managed side. And again, if you decide that you want to go the fully managed route, I think there are additional value adds in there as Karen mentioned, we're really good at connecting to the cloud access providers. We're in all of the exchange points. And then finally, how do you buy it? And that's our best-in-class contract vehicles that we have. And I think if you put all that together and you put it all in a box, that is the box to open that says Centurylink on the side. And I think we can do all those things for you.
Fantastic. Jason, do you want to add anything there? Final thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to, who is Centurylink? And one of the things I think I've been most excited about, to be at Centurylink and how it's the foundation of the company. It's fiber, it's internet connectivity, it's a rural market approach, and how do we get that base level internet connectivity out to the far reaching edges of the world, definitely the United States, but really everywhere. So it's the internet first. And that is what's going to enable things like Sd-Wan, cloud connectivity, and all of those future applications. And so we've been really excited to make those investments and to be there to help expand that. And then behind that, I totally agree with Scott. It's our people, it's our management approach, but it's also our partners. We're not scared to go ask for help and get it from people that are aligned with our vision when we need it. And that's ultimately going to help the customer. And then we have the contract vehicles as well to help, not only the civilian government, but the defense base as well to get to Centurylink.
And our state and local base as well.
And state and local. Definitely not forgetting about that.
Karen,
our friends in SLED.
Our friends in SLED. Karen, do you want to add a final thought there?
Well, I think Scott and Jason summed it up great. I would just say that we have such operational experience in doing this for many years now across hundreds of sites, and we look forward to a co-managed or fully managed approach with our end users.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank my amazing panel. You're all incredible, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and your vision. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have.